My dog, Boss, a large blue-nosed pit bull, kept barking at the clock my girlfriend, Stacy, bought me. The clock is a hand-carved wooden antique. It's got a nice gloss finish, and it has words engraved on the back, but I don't know what it says. Boss just stares at it, and as soon as it hits 2 a.m., he goes ballistic. And I keep having nightmares too. Ever since I put the clock on the wall, I've been dreaming about Stacy walking into my room and getting on top of me. She kisses me and apologizes for what she's about to do. Then she takes a knife and cuts me open from my chest to my belly button. She uses her hands to break my rib cage. And as I bleed out and watch her rip out my organs left and right, she stops, throwing my insides, and holds up my heart to inspect it. Then she puts my heart in her mouth, closes her eyes, and takes a bite. She lets out a moan to show her satisfaction. My blood spurts out of my heart, and she attempts to catch every drop. I'm confused as to how I'm still alive, but then I wonder where my dog is, and I look over beside the bed, and I see him laying on his side, dead. His body is covered in blood, and his legs are missing. I begin to feel lightheaded. The room starts spinning, and I pass out. Then I wake up in my room. I've had that nightmare 4 times, and I hung up the clock a week ago. It was a reoccurring thing. I no longer trusted Stacy. She came over every night, but I stopped letting her sleep with me. As soon as I grow tired, I would ask her to go home. I would go to work, and every clock would look like the one I had at my house. My friend, David, told me I should just take the clock off the wall. Yeah, why didn't I think of that before, right? So, I took it down. I put it in the closet, and that night, I had an even worse nightmare. In this one, Stacy came over, and when I tell her I'm tired and that she should leave, she persuades me to go to the bedroom and have a good time. I agree, and I lay down on the bed. She gets on top of me and we start to make out. She puts her hands on my face and makes her way to my neck. Then I feel a sharp pain in my throat. I gasp for air, and she lifts her body up to reveal her hands pressed down into the bed at the sides of my neck. She lifts her hands and I see a wire dripping in my blood. I try to push her off, but I can't manage to touch her. I grab my neck, and all I could feel is my warm blood turning ice cold by the second, and excruciating pain that makes me want it all to end. I touch my neck again, and I feel a deep line in my skin. I can't breathe, and Stacy starts laughing. I wake up to my dog howling, and he started growling at me, or so I thought. I quickly turned around to see a dark figure that was 5'3", with the same petite figure as Stacy. It's almost exact, and I tried to focus my eyes on the object in attempts to give it color. It brings its face closer to me, and it looks exactly like Stacy, but she was pale and her eyes were gouged and dripping in blood. She attempted to grab me. I screamed and jumped back. I hit the floor hard enough to knock me out. When I woke the next morning, I was in my bed. Maybe it was just all a nightmare. I got up and got ready for work. I looked in the mirror and saw bags under my eyes. I really needed to find a way to get some sleep. So before work, I begged and pleaded with the clock to let me sleep. I told it I would follow through with its every demand. And it began to whisper at me. I looked at my dog to see if he heard the clock speaking too, to make sure I wasn't going crazy, and he was staring at the clock with his head turned sideways. I was amazed that it had responded to my cries for rest, but I was disgusted at the actions it wanted me to make. What? No, I can't do that. Forget this. I removed the clock from the wall and burned it in the fire pit behind my house. Then I took the ashes and buried them in the backyard. I figure I should sleep better now, right? I headed to work and apologized for my late arrival. I lied and said I woke up late. I worked. I returned home, happy as ever. I walked into my home, fed my dog, and made my way to my room. I felt so relaxed, and I drifted off to sleep almost immediately. The dream I had that night was better than the sleep I had the nights before. In my dream, I was in the park with Stacy. We had a picnic, and then we laid on the blanket and stared at the clouds. She began to play with my hair. I asked her to marry me, and she said yes. She hugged me, but then she smacked me and hit me on the back. I was in shock that she hit me, but she just leaned back and smiled at me. She told me that she loved me, and I told her I loved her too. My back began to feel like it was getting stabbed over and over again. I began to cringe, and Stacy looked worried. She asked me what was wrong, but stopped me when I tried to touch my back. I was finally able to feel where the pain was coming from. She had stabbed me in the back with a large kitchen knife. I replayed the hits she gave me in my head and figured it out. The slap was to distract me from the force she applied to my back. My adrenaline rush made it to where I didn't feel it. I looked at her in disbelief, and she shrugged and shook her head. Then she took a razor and slit my throat. I fell back and just lay there, coughing and bleeding out. Blood was flowing out of my mouth and I couldn't breathe. I tried to speak but only gurgled blood. Before I woke up, all I heard was her laughter and the clock, telling me to do as it said. And I tried to scream, "No!" but I couldn't. I don't know if I died of drowning in my own blood or blood loss, but when I died in my nightmare, I woke up. I looked around and saw Stacy standing at my window. She was looking through the blinds. She turned around towards me and gave me the most beautiful smile I had ever seen. Usually, she smiles with her mouth closed, but today, she smiled at me with her beautiful white teeth showing. I smiled at her and thought, today is a good day. I opened my arms for a hug, and she began to slowly walk towards me. Her smile was still large, almost ear to ear. Her blonde hair was glowing. I asked her how she got into the house, and she said my front door was unlocked. Everything, at that point, became suspicious to me. I know I locked the door. I always lock the door. I put my arms down to show her I no longer wished for her embrace, so she just sat at the edge of the bed. She said I had been acting strange recently. She said I had been talking to the clock as if it was responding, and that I hadn't fed Boss 2 weeks ago for a whole week. So he's been at her house the entire time. She was lying. I fed him after work the other day. I feed him every day because he's been here. At my house. With me. I slowly moved away from her. She's been feeding me lies. Boss walked into the room and sat next to Stacy. I patted him on the head, and he started to growl. I knew right then she couldn't be trusted. She looked at me funny. I knew she was insane, and that her intentions were evil. Then she asked me what I was looking at. I told her I was petting Boss, and she frowned at me. She said Boss wasn't there. And I looked again and he was gone. That's impossible. He was right there. His head was right under my hand, and I was petting him. Stacy started rubbing her fingers through my hair, and it felt so good. No, she's trying to manipulate me. I pushed her hand away. She called me sick and said I had to take my medicine. I don't even take medicine. But then she pulled out a bottle of prescription meds that had a label with my name on it. Schizophrenia. I don't have that. Maybe I do. I took the medicine, but then I started feeling drowsy. Stacy said it was the reason I hadn't been taking it. She said she would take care of me. And I laughed and told her the clock told me to do some crazy things. She asked me what the clock said, and I told her that it wanted me to shoot her in the back 4 times, then scalp her and watch her blood run all over my carpet. It wanted me to cut pieces of her skin off and cook it like bacon. It wanted me to eat her skin while I pulled out her teeth with pliers and use a knife to cut out her eyes and put them in a beautiful glass casing and hang it on the wall. I laughed about it, and my girlfriend looked extremely upset. She walked out of the room and walked back in with the clock she bought me and asked if it was that clock that spoke to me. I thought I burned that clock, but I guessed it was just the schizophrenia messing with me. I confirmed that it was that specific clock that gave me the absurd instructions. She began screaming at the clock and said it betrayed her or something. Then she slammed the clock on the ground and looked at me. Her eyes were filled with rage and hatred. She grabbed the lamp and tried to smash it against my head, but I shielded myself with my arms and pieces of glass got stuck in my arm when it broke. I hopped up, but my head was still spinning from the medicine she gave me. Boss then ran into the room. I knew He had been here with me the entire time. I knew I wasn't insane. I looked at her, and she was holding a sharp part of glass from the now destroyed lamp. I was really scared. I looked over at Boss, who was confused at the situation at hand. I looked back at Stacy. She was just standing on the other side of my bed. She looked ready to act at any second. And that's when I knew what I had to do. And I screamed, "Boss, attack!" Boss ran at her and started snarling and biting at her. She attempted to stab him, and she dropped the piece of glass. Then I felt a sharp needle in my neck, and I passed out. And here I am, in a comfortable room. It's white and secure. And I wear this jacket that makes me hug myself so that I'm always warm. According to my friend here, his name is David, I told my dog to attack Stacy when she broke up with me and came back a week later to get the clock back. But the clock says otherwise.